to your week, huh?
Absolutely.
Then lock it on to WRKS Pickens Jackson.
Worldwide at thezone1059.com.
And on your radio.
At ESPN 105.9.
Live from our studio.
The Zone.
Stand by for audio. Got it.
It's 8 a.m. and you're tuned to Mississippi's #1 choice for non-stop sports. The Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds.
Where am I?
On The Zone 105.9 and online
At thezone1059.com.
And here we go. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone. Steve Palazzolo will join us. NFL Insider, the latest on Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson. What's happening with Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks? Oh, man. Drama. Sports talk radio loves some drama, right? We love drama. We say we don't, but we love drama. Or as we call it on the show, drama. But we love it in sports. It's just one big soap opera for the Blakey Blakeser. 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, WRKS. Steve Palazzolo will join us at 8:30. He'll join us on the Miller Lite guest line. Welcome in, Out of Bounds. Brought to you by the delicious Let's Go Scallops and 10-ounce filet, medium rare, and 4 rows of small batch old-fashioned at Kessler Prime in the Renaissance. Visit KesslerPrime.com to make a reservation. Several different ways that you can get in touch with us. The Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line is 601-995-1059. Twitter handle, @BowBounds. Give us a follow there. And then Mississippi Ag John Deere Tractor text line is 601-885-3776. Funny, Blake was talking about War Eagle Rich on the Mississippi Ag text line. He is not excited about Bo Nix as their quarterback. And this is interesting because, Ole Miss has the best quarterback returning in the SEC. Someone may, match Matt Corral's production. Maybe the young man in Starkville, maybe the young man in Tuscaloosa, maybe someone else. I don't know. Dan Mullen is perfectly capable of finding whatever he needs to find between now and Labor Day weekend. And then there's several schools that we don't have a lot of confidence in as far as being dynamic at quarterback. LSU, Georgia, A&M. We'll see what Arkansas does. I mean, they've got a great offensive coordinator. The #1 play caller in the Southeastern Conference, Kendall Briles, right? I mean, Lane Kiffin could be 1A, but if you run the numbers, Kendall Briles is the #1 play caller in the Southeastern Conference. What will Arkansas do? They don't have dynamic talent like Alabama, LSU, some other programs, even Ole Miss. But we'll see what they can scheme up. Auburn, Brian Harsin, their new coach, is not married to Bo Nix. Gus Malzahn was. He took the bait. They got all into it. Legacy kid, Birmingham area, jettisoned off a bunch of guys, transferred, went all in on Bo Nix. He's a nice player at best. He's not as good as Will Rogers. I mean, Will Rogers didn't get any hype. But when you play in the Birmingham metro area and your dad's a former player and you sign with Auburn, and I think Blake is going to die on this hill, and I don't blame him. we still think of Gus as this like there are people around the country that like college football that if you talk to them today at lunch at Two Brothers Smoked Meats or wherever you are, Two Brothers in Starkville, by the way, or wherever you are in this SEC footprint, they automatically believe, because it kind of got set in stone about 12 years ago, that Gus is an offensive wizard and a QB guru. And Gus will always have his fingerprints on Cam. But I think if you just kind of step back and you think about Cam Newton at Auburn, you think, the most amazing physical athlete at the quarterback position that we've ever seen at the collegiate level. at 6'6", 250 pounds. I remember on that Thursday night, this is before they took off. They played Mississippi State like the second or third game of the season.
Yep.
I'm on the sideline because I had to do the show. I'm obviously in Starkville. I had to do the show the next day at Cappy's Steakhouse, which is now the Breakfast Club. Another good place to go. And I'll never forget looking at Cam and going, I've never seen anything like that. Ever. In my life. I've never, ever, holy smoke, 6'6", 250 pounds, looks like an edge rusher, but is out there playing quarterback.
Yeah.
Never witnessed it, never watched anything like it. And then they go on to, what was it, a 21-point come-from-behind win in the Iron Bowl?
Yeah. They were down, 27-6, and they win 28-27. Yeah.
Anyway, back to Gus.
But
there are people that will tell you that Gus is a better offensive mind than Dan Mullen or QB.
Possible.
It's not even close. It's like comparing Kentucky football to Alabama football. It's not even close. Now, is Gus a good head coach? Yes. Has he been dynamic on offense? Not really. Not really. Neither is Jimbo. There are two guys that, because we label, and in sports we can't move off the label, but there are two guys that have been labeled as offensive wizards, and they're not. Do I think that they know offense? Obviously. Do they know how to run a practice and get guys where they need to? And do they know how to game plan at a certain level? Yeah, and play. I don't think they're good play callers. Kendall Browse, Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach, Sarkisian now at Texas, but he was in the SEC. Sark is excellent. But Gus and Jimbo are not special play callers.
Can I ask this question? Would Cam Newton have been Cam Newton if he went anywhere? Like, if he wasn't at Auburn, do you think Cam Newton is Cam Newton if he's at Florida still, or if he took Mississippi State offer?
Yes.
Yeah.
He would have still been amazing. They may not have won it, but he would have still been amazing.
Yeah, he would have been Cam Newton. Outside of Cam Newton, has Gus Malzahn ever taken a quarterback and made him better? And then let's look, same thing with Jimbo Fisher. If Jameis Winston goes anywhere else, isn't Jameis Winston going to be Jameis Winston? Jimbo didn't make him anything special, it doesn't seem like. He was just the most talented quarterback of that era, or that little pocket of time in the ACC, which wasn't running at the high level that it is now. So outside of the two generational, once-in-a-20-year signing quarterbacks that the two guys signed at their respective schools, have either of them ever elevated a quarterback?
Well, I think that's the question that we need to be asking. And how much confidence do you have that Jimbo will... did Kellen Mond get better? I didn't see it the last 3 years.
No.
He looked the same to me as he did 3 years. Now, was he capable of making some plays? Sure. Is he a good football player? Absolutely. Is he tough? Man, he took shot after shot. He's like Bo Wallace and Dak Prescott. Those dudes are just nasty tough. I think it's a question that we can ask. I know we can. And now that we've had other guys join the conference, either again or for the first time, Kendall Browse, Lane Kiffin, Mike Leach, Sarkisian, again gone, but did a magnificent job play calling. And he may even be better than Kiffin. It's a great debate. They're both really good. We're splitting hairs at that point. But see, for example, Dan's a better quarterback coach than play caller.
Agreed.
But the mix is at a level that is high enough that he far exceeds and outproduces Gus Malzahn and Jimbo Fisher. Do you see where I'm going there?
Yeah, Bull says it correct. Gus made Stidham worse when he came out of Baylor and got to Auburn.
Now, Stidham is a great example. That's a head-scratcher for me.
He's an NFL quarterback. He still got drafted.
Yeah. He got worse at Auburn.
Yes.
Year 1 to year 2. Yet I still think Gus is a better head coach than offensive coordinator. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. is brought to you by Superior Foundation for all your foundation repairs. Superior Foundation for all your foundation repairs. Superior.ms. Foundation repairs are miserable. Go with Superior Foundation. That's Superior Foundation. I love the quarterback discussion within the Southeastern Conference. This year it starts with Matt Corral. Then there's some other names. Will Rogers will be talked about a good bit throughout the spring and summer. I believe without a doubt he'll be the starting quarterback at MSU. There's a lot of people that always love the guy that you don't know much about, the new guy coming in or the backup. We've all heard about Sawyer Robertson from out in the Lubbock, Texas area. Highly, highly recruited, 4-star player that Mike Leach signed at the QB position, set Texas high school records, and he could be really good. I don't think that Will Rogers is going to relinquish the job in 2021. Now, you may have a heck of a battle in 2022, but I don't see that in 2021. I think it's Will Rogers, and I have a lot of confidence in that. Now, there's another guy that could be one of the best quarterbacks in the Southeastern Conference that may not play quarterback. That's John Rhys Plumlee. Now, if you drop him at Florida or Auburn, Tennessee, A&M, of course, Kendall Browse could do amazing things with John Rhys Plumlee. Because no doubt in my mind, John Rhys Plumlee could complete well over 60% of his passes. As a starting QB in the SEC, especially in the right system. But what does he choose to do? He's going to play a little more baseball. I don't know how much he's really going to get on the field. He's going to play a little more. He obviously loves it. He's going to play a little more baseball and I guess decide this summer if he wants to be a slot receiver at Ole Miss or quarterback at Southern Miss or Auburn or Florida. Well, transferring within the league is not – they're not going to allow that without sitting out. So – maybe ACC, Big 12. He would crush in the Big 12. He'd crush in the ACC. They don't have the same personnel as we do in the Southeastern Conference. So if you drop JRP in the group of 5, Southern Miss, Central Florida, Troy, he'd be outstanding with the right offensive coaches to understand what to do with him and what not to do with him. That's any QB, by the way. Will Hall make a run at him? He's from the Hattiesburg area. He'd be great in Will Hall's offense. Will Hall's the new head football coach at Southern Miss. I mean, that's like tailor-made for what he wanted to do. He could be the equivalent of let me think of somebody recently. I mean, he could be one of the biggest playmakers in the group of 5 at the quarterback position if he went to Southern Miss. It could be the difference in Southern Miss winning 7 games in Will's first year and winning 10 games in Will's first year. That's the difference in John Rhys Plumlee. So we'll keep an eye on that as that unfolds in June and July. But he decided to stay, not transfer somewhere, and go through a spring as a quarterback, stay at Ole Miss and play baseball. Don't know how much he's going to get on the field again. Ole Miss is stacked, and I'm just not sure that he's going to get in the rotation. We'll see. Maybe he will. Jeff Lebby, Blake, Central Florida.
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's my first choice if I'm Central Florida, but I know why he would want to be there. I mean, A, head coaching. B, it's like a top 5 G5 job.
Sure. So we'll keep an eye on that. Jeff Lebby, kind of the co-offensive coordinator at Ole Miss. Lane drives the train, so to speak, but Lebby's a tremendous asset for Ole Miss or anybody because he's a little offensive guru. He is a little wizard. We'll see if Central Florida would go that. He's young, hot name, hot offense. Modern Baylor offense, all that. We'll see what happens there. Again, circle back. Matt Corral is playing for big money in 2021. Big money. Not just money. He's playing for big money. Because he could play his way into a top 10 pick, or he could be a second-round pick. You don't ever know. We're about to see QB musical chairs in the quarterback carousel. This could actually impact Matt Corral at the NFL level. We don't know what's going to happen with Carson Wentz. We don't know what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson, with Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders, with Jimmy Garoppolo, the San Francisco 49ers. Well, I guess with Dak Prescott. There's a March 6th deadline for Dak Prescott. So the Cowboys either tag him by the end of the day, March 6th, for $38 million on a franchise tag, or they will sign him to a long-term deal. The Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, is brought to you by Portico Development. Beautiful new development in Starkville, Mississippi. It's about 3 or 4 minutes from Duty Noble Field. 0 lot line homes. They just sold another one this week. I was with the guys last night. 3-bedroom, 3-bath houses. They've got 3 ready right now if you're looking to move permanently and or a game day house. And you are right by Duty Noble Field, right behind the Hilton Garden Inn and Suites in Starkville. So how do you tour a home if you're coming up here to Starkville? You want to call McBride Real Estate to see a Portico home. That's 662-338-0882. And Portico Development, Kerry Pennebaker, Todd Sanders, Trey Pace, Brooks Bryan, 0 lot line homes, 3-bedroom, 3 baths, less than 4 minutes from Duty Noble Field. That's Portico Development, McBride Real Estate, 662-338-0882. We're live at the Mobile Bank Plus studio. Want to welcome you in. We've got Steve Palazzolo next, and we'll talk quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson. There's a lot going on. Blake, what do you think? If you had to call it right now, does Dallas go with the $38 million tag and eventually get a deal done this summer, but they got to tag him, and then they've got several months to work out a long-term deal, or do they go ahead and do a long-term deal by March 6th for Dak Prescott?
I think they would be inclined to go ahead and do a long-term deal. I think if you tag him and keep trying to negotiate, it just leads to a breakup in the long run.
Okay. Discussion last night at dinner was the fact that now people, I think, are coming around to the fact that it is going to be extremely difficult for Prescott to win in the postseason in Dallas. They haven't won in the postseason in 24 years. Do you think Jerry Jones is going to change at 78 or 79 years old?
I mean, it's hard for everybody to win in the postseason, though. We've seen that.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's not necessarily easy, but I understand what you're saying. It's not. They're better well run than they have been 10 years ago, but they're still not very well run, if that makes sense.
No, you can't say they're definitely. Maybe they are 10 years ago, but again, the Jalen Smith contract, the Ezekiel Elliott contract, those are terrible.
Yeah,
that's
no
what.
doubt.
That's what bad franchise.
But the
that's
Rams,
what the Detroit Lions and the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, teams that don't win. That's what they do.
But look, for what it's worth, the Rams have signed the 3 worst contracts in recent memory, even over the Jalen Smith, signing Todd Gurley to a record contract, then took a record dead cap hit when they literally cut him. Brandon Cooks signed him to a record contract, then trade him, take a record cap hit. They signed Jared Goff after mortgaging the franchise, it seems like, and then have to remortgage the franchise and also take the league's highest dead cap hit to get rid of him. So they've done all that, still made the Super Bowl, and seem to be a playoff team every year. So I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's impossible, but I also don't know that you're
you're comparing, though. I think the Rams are so much more talented at the head coaching position and their general manager / personnel people that they can overcome that. Dallas doesn't have a prayer at overcoming what we're talking about.
Maybe the McCarthy can do that. I mean, he had 1 year in a pandemic. It's not Jason Garrett anymore.
True. We'll keep an eye on that. Steve Palazzolo, NFL QB Insider, PFF.com, coming up on the Out of Bounds Show. Hey, I want to let you know we're super excited about it. XL Water and Coffee. They are the number one residential bottled water service in the Jackson metro area. Go to wateratmydoor.com. That's wateratmydoor.com. And get 50% off your initial order with discount code BOUNDS. That's discount code BOUNDS. Visit wateratmy. All right, back. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're always powered by Independent Roofing Systems, the number one commercial roofing company in Mississippi. Independent Roofing Systems, roofing.ms. Small or large projects, your next commercial project, you want to go with Independent Roofing Systems, the number one commercial roofer in the state of Mississippi. Joe, Larry, and Melissa will take care of your job. Locally owned and operated for 40 years. Independent Roofing System. The show is also presented by Two Brothers Smoked Meats. Fantastic restaurant in Starkville, Mississippi. Stark Vegas, the historic Cotton District. Street tacos, wings, drinks, great outdoor area. Two Brothers Smoked Meats when you're coming through Stark Vegas. For basketball, for baseball, football, or to see your son and daughter at school. Two Brothers Smoked Meats in the historic Cotton District. Speaking of our guests, join us on the Miller Lite guest line. We've got Steve Palazzolo, NFL insider, and he, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus, and he joins us on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Hey, Steve, how awesome was it that Tom Brady decided to throw the Lombardi Trophy from one boat to another in the Tampa Bay area?
He's just adding to the legend, man. You know, the greatest of all time, and he trusts himself enough to toss the Lombardi, and he's got 6 others just in case something happens to it. So he had a little safety net, I would say.
So, you know, over the years we've talked about, has it been fun in New England? And I think it has to a certain extent because they win all the time. But look at the way they're set. First of all, it's 80 degrees and sunshine, which is better than, 9 below in Boston. But how much fun is this guy having, Steve, with most of his teammates being in their mid-20s?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a lot of things at play there. You know, I think the New England way, shaped Brady. I'm a Tom Brady guy, and I'm going to defend him, and I think he is, the greatest. And I think that's pretty clear. But at the same time, the New England way shaped him a little bit. It maybe helped create some of the discipline and all that stuff. But I do think Brady hit a point in his career where he said, okay, Brady obviously cares about his own legacy. We know that. There's no better marketing tool for TB12 than Tom Brady playing in his mid-40s, winning Super Bowls. But I think a big part of him leaving New England is like, okay, yes, not only can I have more fun, but I could do it, a little differently, right? So with a different scheme and all the things that people ask, did Belichick make Brady, and was he a system quarterback? Anybody that came up with some sort of comment that was anti-Tom Brady, it feels like he just went out there and said, I'm going to answer it. I'm going to show you that I can do it, or that it was me. And part of it is, and he also did it in a different environment, one that wasn't the same quote unquote Patriots way. It was Bruce Arians' way, which is more laid back, and yes, with all those playmakers that are his buddies, and they're just having a ball down there.
I know none of us really know Belichick, but what do you think he thinks of what just played out over the past few weeks, and of course on Sunday night with Brady and the Buccaneers?
Yeah, I mean, good luck getting into Belichick's brain, but I think, just the human nature aspect of it. I'm sure there's a friend component where it's like, hey, I'm happy for Tom, and I think there's probably a legacy component where it's like, man, he just went and just did this on his own. It's probably not as cut and dry as like some, the media discussion would be like, oh, Brady proves you didn't need Belichick or whatever, because there are some extreme things out there that probably aren't all that true. But yeah, I bet it eats at him maybe a little bit. Brady went and stuck it to him and said, look, I can still play. You should have never given up on me, even at 42, 43 years old.
Let's go to Dak Prescott. No, let's stay with the Super Bowl. Then we'll go to Dak on the other end. All right. Mahomes and Reed, it wasn't a good night, and we all know that they were facing an uphill battle with their offensive line. Evidently, though, Steve, according to all of us covering the game and the line, we still thought that was something that the Chiefs could overcome, the two tackles and so on. They couldn't. So who could have done more, Steve? Mahomes or Reed or both, as far as the way they didn't execute on Sunday night in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think there were a couple things at play here. I think the offensive line is the story that everybody's running with, but I think one of the things we always talk about at PFF was, like, if you're building a defense, you want to actually build it back to front. You actually want to build your secondary first and your front seven second, because coverage is the ability to cover and just take away first reads for quarterbacks is the most important thing. And I think that's the overrated or the underrated piece of what happened in that game. Mahomes didn't have anywhere to go right off the bat. And then, oh, by the way, the pass rush was winning as well. So I think there's this element of, like, the secondary deserves credit for the Bucs. Who could have done more for the Chiefs? The O-line obviously could have played better. I think personnel-wise, though, they also made a mistake just moving Mike Remmers, who had been playing right tackle and been playing a solid right tackle, moving him to left tackle. They didn't need. I know The Blind Side was a big movie and all that stuff, but it's an overrated concept. Left tackle and right tackle are of equal importance. So I would have kept Mike Remmers, a right tackle by trade, at right tackle, and he's a solid player there. And then your only real weakness is at left tackle. Instead, they moved him to the left side. He's not familiar there, and he had two weaknesses. I think that was a pregame factor for the Chiefs. And then, yeah, the O-line could have been played better, and then I think the Chiefs could have done a better job in Mahomes, too, playing within structure, having more open throws underneath, because the Bucs were just trying to keep everything underneath, right? And they were doing a great job of rallying to the ball, but the Chiefs had been really patient in previous weeks, taking that over and over and over again, and I don't think they were doing that in this game against the Bucs.
Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, on the New Belgium Fat Tire guest line discussing NFL QBs in the Super Bowl. So I was listening to Tony Baselli, offensive lineman. We think he's going to go in the Hall of Fame at some point. Jacksonville Jaguars color analyst called the game for Westwood One on radio. He told Dan Patrick, he said, look, there's no doubt there were difficult things to overcome like you just described. But he also, and he said, look, Mahomes is freaky talented. But he said his fundamentals are not good. That he moves when he doesn't have to move. He backpedals when he doesn't have to backpedal. But he can overcome all that because of how good he is. Is that what y'all see at Pro Football Focus, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so one of the easiest data points, because we collect 200-something data points per play, one of the easiest ones to look at is drop back depth from the line of scrimmage. So when the quarterback hits the top of his drop, and this is where you need to understand, the quarterback needs to understand how important, his drop, his footwork is to what the offensive line is doing. So most dropbacks should not be beyond 9.5 yards. Sometimes you get to 10 yards, and that's fine. Once you get beyond 10 yards, it changes the pass blocking angles for your tackles. And all of a sudden, the defender is going to a different drop point than the tackle is blocking for. And sometimes it makes the tackles look bad because the defender's running right at the quarterback at 11 yards, whatever it is, and the tackle can't block for that. He's blocking the pocket, and it looks bad, right? But that's what Mahomes did. He had about 20 of those dropbacks that were actually beyond 10 yards, which is literally impossible to block for. You just can't do it. It's not your tackle's job. And again, Brady's the opposite, right? So and Peyton Manning was the opposite. On a play where you were supposed to drop to 9.5, they would be right there. They'd be at 9, right? And you have this nice, where your quarterback's going to be. That's why when people say, hey, mobile quarterbacks are harder to sack, it's not really the truth. Now, Mahomes is great at avoiding sacks. He is not great at inviting pressure. He invites too much pressure that where he puts the O-line in trouble or he scrambles when he doesn't need to and all that stuff. So Tony, who I respect a lot, absolutely, I think there's a lot of truth in that. And again, there's truth in all of this. The O-line played poorly. Mahomes had poor mechanics, and they could have schemed up some quicker throws to mitigate some of that stuff.
Okay. Was the drive going into halftime with 1 minute and 1 second left, and Andy Reid called some timeouts, and the Buccaneers got a penalty in their favor, and then things. When that all played out, Steve, did you think that was ball game, or did you still give the Chiefs an opportunity to go into halftime and kind of reset and reboot and make a run at it in the second half?
I will never write off the Chiefs. I mean, they've just had way too many opportunities, to make comebacks, and it's not like they've never had a bad half of football offensively, right? They have before. The Patriots did it a lot to them through the years, and then they come back and they still end up scoring 31. So I would never write off the Chiefs, but yeah, that end of the half sequence was. There were people criticizing Tampa Bay for not calling a timeout quickly enough when it was like just under 2 minutes. But I think that was because it was like, look, we're going to give ourselves – Tampa Bay was saying we're going to give ourselves a minute, and if we don't get it, we don't get it. But if we give ourselves 2 minutes and we don't get it, then Mahomes gets another chance. I thought Tampa Bay actually played it great. Kansas City helps them out with a timeout during their 1 minute drill. You get the pass interference. Yeah, that was absolutely a turning point. And the biggest thing, too, for the Bucs, every time the Chiefs made a mistake, the Bucs scored a touchdown. They weren't just stealing 3 points. They were scoring touchdowns after the offsides on the field goal and this end of the half stuff. They were picking 7 points up, and that is how you beat the Chiefs. You have to get sevens, not threes. If it was threes, all of a sudden the Bucs are only scoring 20, and it's a lot closer game. You have to score touchdowns and take advantage of those mistakes, and that's what the Bucs offense did.
All right, let's go to Russell Wilson. What do you make? First of all, you know more about it than Blake and I do, but we think Schottenheimer was good. All things considered, I still think Pete Carroll, being a defensive-minded coach, may handcuff his quarterback, but two, his OC. And Pete keeps talking about how they need to run the ball more, and I'm going, you have Russell Wilson. I don't understand. No. So maybe weigh in on Schottenheimer, but then Russell seems to be on this. I think they're looking at what happens with Tom Brady and LeBron. And they have the ability to recommend certain things to their general managers and personnel groups and have been very successful doing it. And I don't blame Russell for wanting a little say, or Deshaun. What is your takeaway from kind of what we're hearing out of Seattle the last 3 or 4 days, Steve?
Yeah, I only said no to Pete Carroll saying let's run the ball more. But Brian Schottenheimer, yeah, right? Like, Brian Schottenheimer's interesting because I think there was definitely a point where he was not that great, and it was a lot of run, pass, and putting Russell Wilson into bad situations. But I thought this year, especially early on, Schottenheimer deserved a ton of credit. They were throwing on early downs. They were doing everything that my analytical community that I live in would say to do, right? Run more play action and throw on early downs and let Russ cook and carry the team and all this stuff. I thought Schottenheimer did a great job of that. And when Russ was sitting there on pace for like 75 touchdowns, half of those were Schottenheimer's, right? Screen pass here and open drag route there. So I thought he did fine. But things definitely got a little bit more bland down the stretch. And I think Russell Wilson's comments about needing better protection, it's just like the Super Bowl. Like, all things are true. It's not as simple as, well, the O-line's bad, that's why he gets sacked. I had a whole Twitter thread yesterday showing, here are the plays where Russell Wilson's to blame. He either has open receivers, or he's holding the ball for 5 seconds, or he's running into pressure, and he is absolutely to blame for a lot of the hits that he has taken through the years. But at the same time, he's never had a better pass-blocking offensive line by our grade. He's had 2 better than 20th in his entire career back to 2012. So it's a bad pass-blocking offensive line. They need to get better. Russ needs to do a better job of getting rid of the ball, and I think Seattle could do a little bit more with the horizontal pass game, quicker hitting stuff, getting the ball out of his hands. As far as Russ trying to dictate things, I just don't know if he's awesome, by the way, but I don't know if he gets the same trust that a Tom Brady does, or a LeBron, obviously. Mm-hmm. And it's really tough to say, okay, QB, tell me what you want to do. Let's play GM. It's a really delicate balance, and I don't know that Russ has that level of trust that, say, a Tom Brady does at this point. Interesting.
Okay, so why – I know he doesn't have 7 rings or even 6 going into the weekend, and neither does anybody else. So where do you fall on that? I mean, does Aaron Rodgers, who only has 1 ring, but we know he's great. Russell, 1 ring, we know he's great. Deshaun, we know he's really good. where do you fall on that? Do you believe that they should have some say-so, and if so, how much, Steve?
I think maybe just when it comes to playmakers, guys they're throwing to. I think that's where quarterbacks have the best feel. And I'll also say this: you started the segment talking about the Patriot way versus the Bucs, right? You think Tom Brady had personnel say with New England for 20 years? He was just a player. He was just a player who showed up. He had a little say in the game plan, but that's just like what quarterbacks and offensive coordinators do, right? It wasn't like he was making personnel decisions. That's part of the reason why he left, because they actually – and so New England actually went out there and said, man, we got Tom Brady. We don't really need great playmakers. And they missed on receivers left and right. If anybody had a right to complain, it's Brady. Now, of course, he goes to Tampa Bay, and he brings Gronk, who he's familiar with, and he brings Antonio Brown, who he's familiar with. And so I think there's something there for quarterbacks if they have a familiar receiver and they know receiver skill sets and they know how to work with them and they understand chemistry. But if Russell Wilson's like, man, get me some protection, let's draft offensive linemen, I think that part's way too far, right? So I think quarterbacks have a really good feel for their playmakers and what they want, and I think that's where maybe they should probably get a little bit of input.
Okay. And so at the end of the day, you're okay with Russell Wilson coming in and saying, hey, here's kind of what I would like. I'm not going to pick the player in the third round, but here's what I would like as far as skill players around me. You're good with that. But anything above and beyond that, you want to leave that to the personnel departments.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a collaborative effort, right? I mean, when you're having your 2020 exit interview, so to speak, Russ and Pete Carroll and Shane Waldron, who's coming in as offensive coordinator, hey, how can we get better next year? I got to take fewer sacks, right? We want to block it up better. We could use a third receiver who gets open quickly. We got DK down the field. We get Tyler Lockett down the field. Who's our number three? What type of number three do we want? Do we want a more horizontal aspect to the offense? How is that going to play out? What stuff do I need to work on? Be Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? It's a collaborative effort that I think makes a ton of sense, right? We want to be explosive on offense. How are we going to get there? To me, those are the discussions that they should be having, but also not on the Dan Patrick show, right? Not on Dan Patrick saying, man, get me some protection. I don't think Seattle's too happy about how that all played out with Russ.
Oh, wow. Okay. Two strong personalities, I would have to believe, with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, who are very established, and that'll be interesting to see how that looks in the offseason. Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus on the New Belgium Fat Tire guest line. Let's go to Dak. March 6th is the deadline. We had a Cowboys insider on this week. The word out of Dallas is that everything is going great with his ankle/leg. They've got to decide by March 6th, do they do $38 million franchise tag or a long-term deal? I know this isn't quite exactly what you do daily, but what do you think will happen by March 6th with Dak?
I'm just always so conservative with these things, and I just think they're going to figure it out. Like, if you ask me, is Deshaun Watson going to stay in Houston, I'd lean yes. I thought Tom Brady was going to stay in New England. So I'm not always right, but I always lean toward, like, the most logical conclusion for both teams, which is a long-term deal. I mean, if Dallas tries to play the franchise tag game, or if they have an unhappy Dak, I think they're just playing with fire, and I don't think they want to do that unless they truly are looking at him and saying, man, he's just not, we just don't trust him as a top 10 guy every year, and we think we can get a rookie contract QB, and I don't think that's the case. So I think they'll figure it out. They'll get a long-term deal, and then it's that balance of what's long-term. Does Dak kind of go that Kirk Cousins route of, hey, I want to be a free agent again in 3 or 4 years? I mean, I think that's kind of the tussle, right? It's like Dak knows he can maximize his value in 3 or 4 years, whereas Dallas would rather have him closer to a long-term deal but for less money. So, I think they'll find some sort of balance, but again, I didn't even think it was going to get this far. So we'll see. But my guess would be long-term deal. They figure something out by then.
Okay. Steve Palazzolo on the Out of Bounds show. Carson Wentz. What's the market for Wentz?
I don't think teams want to give up first rounders, and I think teams are smart to maybe hold strong on that. He's coming off a terrible season, and I don't think 2020 is what he was, which is what he is. He's not one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. However, there's probably some coaches who think they can get him back to that MVP level of 2017. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. He's a mid-tier quarterback, but the leverage is low, right? Because he's coming off his worst season, and you don't know. Was it a slump? Is it this permanent regression? So I think that hurts the market a little bit. There are desperate teams out there, though. The Bears are desperate. The Colts, if they don't get Carson Wentz, they don't have a starter, and they have a playoff caliber team. So there's a little bit of desperation, but I don't think the market's as strong as what Matthew Stafford was getting, with multiple teams looking at some pretty high first-round draft picks that they were throwing at him.
What do you see happening in Las Vegas with John Gruden and Derek Carr? He's kind of a mad scientist. I think he's overrated as both an offensive guy and a head coach. But people love him because of his shtick, and he's good on TV. And I could be wrong there. But what do you think is going on? And what do you think Gruden and Mayock are thinking in Las Vegas with Derek Carr and what they want to do at the QB position, Steve?
I think they're thinking, hey, we can win with Derek Carr, but boy, would we love to get better. It's honestly, I think they're thinking the same thing the Rams are thinking with Jared Goff. And Goff is coming off a less than stellar season, so you can understand why the Rams may have soured on him. Carr's coming off a pretty good season, but I think I use this mid-tier phrase all the time, which is more than half the NFL quarterbacks. They're in this middle-tier group. Derek Carr's in that group, just like Jared Goff, just like a lot of guys. Matthew Stafford, I think, is in that group, but maybe slightly on the higher end. And when you have that guy, you're either excited to get one because your QB situation was terrible. Like the Jets would love to have a mid-tier quarterback at this point, right? The Bears would love to have a mid-tier quarterback at this point. True. So they're excited to get one. But then when you have one for a few years, you feel limited, right? The Rams are like, man, we maxed out in 2018. We need better. The Raiders, after 3 years with Gruden and Carr, might be thinking, oh, boy, would we love to get better. And they'll explore Deshaun Watson, and they'll explore these other opportunities. But I think they think they can win with Carr. They can work around it. But I think that's just the nature of having a mid-tier, mid-level type of quarterback. You always want to get a little bit better.
Okay, so let's go to Tua Tagovailoa. Out of Alabama, gets all the hype, plays with all the great players, goes to Miami, has played well and not looked so well. I mean, you look at his frame, he's going to have to be like Drew Brees-esque for 15 years, you would think, to really maximize what he wants to do. I think the odds say that that's not going to happen. Was he overhyped? Was he overdrafted? I know it's early, but what do you see with Tua, Steve?
Yeah, it's interesting because I thought he was the second-best quarterback behind Burrow in the draft, too. So maybe I missed on him versus Herbert. But I view the quarterback position as differently, I think, than the NFL. I view it as, look, you got to take shots on these guys. There's a chance that he's great, but he doesn't have as great a skills. And I thought I think Miami should definitely be thinking about a quarterback in the draft because you just don't know that Tua's the guy yet. And he did not look good as a rookie as far as his skill set goes. So I think the jury's still out, and that Miami should still keep looking. Maybe Justin Fields. Never know.
All right, so that flew by. 23 minutes with Steve Palazzolo, NFL Insider, PFF.
Can go all day.
I know it. Hey, be good, buddy. Have a good weekend. See you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Steve Palazzolo on the New Belgium Fat Tire guest line. Don't forget to hit that on the podcast, Apple Podcasts. Search the Out of Bounds Show. The show is presented by Bank Plus. It's more than a name. It's a promise. Hour number 3 coming up. Ben Hallen, Kermit Davis discussion coming up next.
Hey there, Lucky Buck here, coming to you live from a nearby meadow. You know, 4-leaf clovers are lucky, of course, but I find that the 3-leafers are lucky too, and just as tasty. Speaking of lucky things in threes, there's Cash 3 from the Mississippi Lottery. Cash 3 has daily drawings with 50-cent and $1 plays and lots of ways to win. So play Cash 3 sometime, and you might be lucky like me. Have fun, y'all.
Must be 21 years or older to play. Please play responsibly.